strength might be rendered irrelevant thanks to the new level of mastery in Kengan Omega, where it's along the lines of seeing the principles or seeing the flow of energy. This is something I want to talk about at length because it's one of those things, kind of like how determined prediction by Canada, that I think is a massive shift in how fights will play out, at least when they involve characters of this level. Characters like Shen Wulong, currently Ryan, and we'll probably see a lot more of these characters later on that are going to be just top tier. But their ability to render strength almost useless is something I want to talk about. But before we get into that, of course liking and subbing would be nice, but I do want to talk about a similar thing happening with pre-initiative or sensing the intent. And this is something we first saw, at least at its highest level, with Kuroki Gensai, where his pre-initiative was so good that even if a person was much faster than him, to the point where he couldn't even perceive him at all, if he could predict or use pre-initiative correctly, it wouldn't really matter. He would be able to essentially counter him no matter how fast that person was. And in his fight with Ray, that became evidently clear because he was the fastest, arguably still the fastest character in the Kengan series, and even got the Queen Bee buff. But none of that mattered because basically pre-initiative renders speed almost useless or null and void. In Kengan Omega, there is that small caveat that Gao Lang puts that, hey look, all you have to do is strike your opponent faster than they can perceive. However, I've talked about that before and I somewhat disagree with Gao Lang here, because I think that speed isn't really the key. And proof of this is his own fight against Carlos, where Carlos manages to predict Gao Lang's fastest punch, the God Claw, and basically create a win scenario out of it. We also see the same thing with Lo Long and Oma in their fight, where Oma is able to use the bursts of the advance to his advantage in speed, but Lo Long eventually catches up to it, and that trick no longer becomes useful. And I think the reason for that is because the surprise factor is actually the reason why you're able to beat pre-initiative. If you're able to do something your opponent can't perceive or sense, then you win, or you had determined prediction, kind of like Canada. But all of this is building up to what we are going to see as the principles or flow of energy here, and that being the level at which a person can render strength useless. We saw this with, of course, Shen Wulong, and even Oma against, I forgot this other sumo dude, where he faced him head on in brute strength despite him having no advantage in basically raw power. We saw Oma literally do this. But I want to focus on the Ryan portion because it is fresh on everyone's mind. William, actually, is probably one of the strongest characters physically we have seen in the verse. He's probably on par with Wakatsuki and Julius. I know Ryan says otherwise, but in my review I talk about how that's probably not as clear when Ryan says, oh, he knows two people that are stronger than him. I say that because I think people will run with that too much. I still think William is, his basic physical prowess is too large to ignore when it comes to this argument. William, in his fight against Ryan, performed so badly despite the fact that he has all this strength, and he is asking himself the question of, okay, what the hell is going on here? The person I am fighting against isn't even using removal, and somehow he is sucking ass. And he finally understands what's happening towards the end of the fight, and that is that Ryan was stopping his power from being fully used, kind of like how the connector was doing as well in his fight against Gaiomokaku, and how Oma was using it in his fight against that sumo dude. I think his name was Kazan or something, I forgot. So essentially, Ryan was actively nerfing William from using his full power, and that's insane, because if he can do it with William, he can probably do it with Wakatsuki and Julius. he probably can do that. There would have to be a really good reason why he can't do that, in my opinion. The same would go for the connector. The connector should be able to render the strength of Wakatsuki and someone like Julius, let's say people who are above William. In theory, he should be able to render the thing that makes them dangerous useless. But also another perk of seeing the flow of energy is that they are able to become stronger than they normally are. And this is insane. And that is the fact that we see this with Shen Wulong giving pointers to Oma on how to improve his general posture and how he throws his strongest punch, the Iron Breaker, and the results create a shockwave. And even then, Shen Wulong's like, oh yeah, you're gonna need to get a lot better. So essentially this level boosts, and this is crazy, it boosts your own stats beyond what is reasonable, but also nerfs your opponent if they don't have this level of mastery. That's what it does. And the result of this, honestly, is that at this level, fighters at this level probably don't have to worry about physical strength as much as characters below this level, because they can deal with power in a sense. Kind of like how in Baki, if you've made it this far, I'm going to talk about Yujiro Hanma and how he managed to deflect, I forgot what is the name of this type of bullet that was large. He managed to deflect it. But a similar case like that, where, yeah, he has brute strength, but he doesn't necessarily need brute strength because there are easier ways to deal with something like that. And so, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. It's crazy, and I wanted to talk about the implications of this, which I already have at this point. But hey, if you like the video, don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it easy.